There is a moment, just before you catch a falling glass, when your hand is already moving. You did not decide to reach for it. You were not aware of choosing. The cup slipped, and your arm was halfway there before the thought even formed. And only afterward, a beat too late, does the feeling arrive that says, I caught it. Slow that instant down, and something strange appears inside it. The movement began first, the awareness arrives second, and this is not only true of sudden reflexes. It is happening, much more quietly, in almost every moment you call now. We like to believe we live in the present, that what we see is happening as we see it, that the world and our experience of it are the same event, perfectly in step, like a clear window we are simply looking through. But that window is not as clear as it feels. Between the instant light strikes your eye and the instant you become aware of what you are seeing, there is a delay, a small one, and the exact size of it is not fixed. It changes from sense to sense, from situation to situation, and no one can give you a single honest number for it. But the basic fact is, steady, awareness is not instant. What you experience as the present is, by some small margin, partly a report on a world that has already moved on, and partly a prediction of what is unfolding right now. This is not a glitch in some unlucky people. It is how every human brain works, including yours, right now, as you take in these words a moment after they actually reached you. And the strangest part is not the delay itself. It is what your brain does to hide it from you. To see why the delay exists, remember that perception is not free. Light hits the back of your eye, and that signal has to be turned into electricity, sent down the optic nerve, broken apart into edges and colors and motion, and then reassembled somewhere deeper into the experience of a face, a room, a cup falling. Sound takes a different route and a different amount of time. Touch, especially from distant parts of the body, can take longer still because the nerve signal has a real distance to climb. None of these arrive at the same speed. The world floods in through different channels, each one slightly late and each late by a different amount. And yet you never notice this. When someone claps their hands in front of you, you do not experience the sight of the clap and the sound of the clap as two separate events at two different times. You experience one thing, a clap, seen and heard together. Your brain has quietly taken signals that arrived out of sync and bound them into a single smooth instant. And it did this so well that you have no idea any stitching took place. That matters, because the smoothness fools you. It feels like proof that your perception is immediate when it is the opposite. It is proof of how much work is being done to make a delayed, fragmented, out-of-order stream of signals feel immediate. The seamlessness is the illusion. So why does the brain bother? Why not just show you the world as the signals come in late and staggered, as they are? Because a merely delayed picture of reality would be dangerous when you need to act. If you genuinely saw the world a fraction late and did nothing to compensate, you would always be reaching for where things used to be. You would catch nothing. You would flinch after the impact. You would step where the ground was, not where it is. So brains learned a different trick. Instead of showing you the past and apologizing for the lag, they learned to anticipate. But the brain does not just hide the delay. It uses it. It does not only wait for the world, it predicts it. Much of what you experience as happening right now is not a fresh report of what just reached your senses. It is your brain's best guess about what is happening, run slightly ahead of the slow incoming signals, and then corrected when the real information catches up. You are watching a model of the world, one your brain is constantly running, updating, and betting on. Most of the time the bet is right, and the correction is so small you never feel it. You can catch this in ordinary life once you know to look. A ball comes at you, and your hand is already in position before you consciously tracked it. A car ahead of you brakes, and you are already lifting your foot before the thought. There is danger has finished forming. Someone speaks, and your reply is half built before they reach the end of the sentence. The phone buzzes, and you have it in your hand before you decided to look. In each of those, the body is running on the prediction, and awareness is following a step behind, narrating what already happened, as though it were happening live. And sometimes you can catch the brain in the act. There is a small, harmless experience with a ticking clock. You glance over at it, and for just a moment, the first tick seems to take too long. The second hand looks frozen, held a fraction longer than it should be, before the normal rhythm returns. That stretched first second is not the clock. It is you. In the instant your eyes flicked across the room, your brain had no fresh image, so it filled the gap and quietly extended that guess backward over the moment you arrived, papering over a blink of blindness with an invention. This is often called chronostasis, the stopped clock illusion, and it is a rare moment where the editing becomes visible. You are being shown a perceptual reconstruction your brain used to cover a moment it could not clearly sample. These small failures are not malfunctions. They are the seams of a process that is usually invisible, and they show that the process is running all the time. Your brain is not a passive screen. It is an active storyteller, working slightly ahead of the slow signals and constantly checking its story against the incoming evidence. And this is where the delay becomes personal, because it touches something more than perception. The same timing puzzle appears, in a more controversial form, when researchers ask about choice. If the brain edits what you see after the fact, does it also edit the feeling of deciding? It deserves care, because here the science is genuinely unsettled. Researchers who study the timing of decisions and actions have found, in certain controlled settings, that brain activity preceding a simple movement can begin before a person reports having consciously decided to move. These findings are debated. They do not prove your sense of choosing is meaningless, and they do not say you are a passenger in your own life. Catching a falling glass is fast, automatic prediction, and it is not the same thing as a slow, deliberate decision. But both hint at something humbling about timing. The feeling of an event, even the feeling of choosing it, can arrive a little behind the moment it actually began. The point here is not to solve free will. It is to notice how late the feeling of control can sometimes arrive. This is where the idea can turn too dark too quickly. It is tempting to decide that if awareness lags behind the body, then the self is a fiction and free will is a lie, and you are just a machine fooling itself. But that is too fast. And it is not honest. The delay does not erase you. It locates you. It tells you where consciousness sits in the sequence of things. Not out in front, commanding reality in real time, but slightly behind it, integrating, making sense, assembling a coherent world out of signals that would otherwise be a chaos of mismatched arrivals. The story is late, but the story is also what lets you live in a world instead of drowning in raw, unsynchronized data. But the delay also makes perception usable. The brain takes a world that arrives broken into pieces, light here, sound a little later, touch later still, none of them aligned, and it hands you back a single seamless present in which a clap is one event, and a falling glass is one smooth motion, and a conversation flows without you having to consciously reassemble it. The price of that gift is that it is always slightly old, and that slightly old, carefully assembled present is the only one any human being has ever had. It is not a lesser version of reality. It is the only version reality has ever offered us. Once you see this, certainty starts to look different. If the present you experience is partly a construction, then how much of what you feel sure about is actually a polished guess? Most of the time the guess is superb, tuned by a lifetime of experience, which is exactly why you almost never notice it. But the same machinery that smooths a clap into a single instant also smooths over your assumptions. This, too, is another version of the same delay. We meet the world already half decided about what it contains, and you can feel that in the most ordinary parts of a day. You read the first line of a message and have already heard a tone in it, irritation or coldness, before you finish reading and realize the tone was never there. You know this feeling. You are already annoyed before you fully know what was said. You walk into a familiar room and miss the one object that moved because your brain showed you the room it expected, not the room in front of you. You see a face and read anger in it because yesterday that face was angry, and you respond to the memory instead of the moment. Some arguments begin right there, in the tiny space between what arrived and what your brain expected to arrive. Not because anyone lied, but because your brain showed up with yesterday's answer before today's person had finished speaking. Prediction is not just a feature of catching glasses. It is the whole posture of the mind. We are forever arriving at the present already braced for what we assume is coming. I want to be careful here, because this is the kind of idea that invites overconfidence, and the truth is unfinished. The size of the delay varies with the sense and the task. The experiments about decision timing are real but contested, and reasonable scientists disagree about what they mean. The picture of the brain as a prediction machine is powerful and well supported, but it is a model, not a final verdict, and consciousness itself remains one of the genuinely open problems in all of science. So hold this lightly, not as a proven account of what you are, but as a useful, humbling way of noticing something usually invisible. Even held lightly, it changes how you sit inside your own experience. Once you know there is a delay, you start to feel the difference between reacting and noticing. So much of a day is spent in pure reaction, where the body responds and the model runs and awareness just rides along, narrating after the fact. You flinch before you know what scared you. You say, "What?" to someone and then, a half beat later, realize you actually heard them and answer before they repeat themselves. You reach for the phone before you have even noticed you were bored. In those moments, you are living almost entirely inside the predicted present, the late narration of a self, mostly on rails. And there is nothing wrong with that. You could not function otherwise. A life lived without prediction, perceiving everything raw and slow, would be unlivable. The gap cannot be closed, but it can be noticed, and noticing it quietly changes the next instant. When a reply feels ready too quickly, that readiness is often the sign that you are answering your prediction and not the person, and simply seeing that can make you wait for the rest of the sentence. When you feel certain about a tone, a face, a room, that certainty is the edit speaking, and you can hold it a moment longer before it hardens into a conclusion. And once in a while you can turn toward a single raw signal on purpose, a sound as it arrives, a familiar face as though the guests were switched off, and feel the strange, slow vividness of attention catching up to the world. You are not closing the delay. No one can. But you are noticing the edit before it hardens into certainty, and that noticing is its own kind of waking up. The strangest part is what this means emotionally. Every person you have ever looked at, you saw a fraction of a second after the light left them. Every word anyone ever spoke to you, you heard just after it was said. You have never once met the world in the exact instant it actually happened. You have only ever known it slightly afterward, faithfully reconstructed, smoothed into a present your brain built, so you would have somewhere to stand. The distance between you and the world is tiny, and it has never once closed, not for you, not for anyone, not in the entire history of conscious life. We are all living a fraction behind the universe, and calling it now. And maybe that is not a tragedy. Maybe it is part of what it means to have a mind at all. We do not simply receive reality, we compose it. We take a fractured, delayed, half-finished stream of signals and turn it into a seamless world every waking moment, without effort and without thanks. And we do it so well that we forget we are doing it at all. The delay is not a failure of the mind. It is the price of having one. So the next time your hand catches the glass before you knew it was falling, do not rush past it. That small gap between the act and your awareness of it, between the world and your knowing of it, is not a flaw to be fixed. It is the space where you actually live. You will never be fully caught up to reality. You were never meant to be.